Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. Following a meeting earlier this week, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham appears to have secured President Trump's support for a bipartisan sanctions bill against Russia. The proposed measures target countries purchasing discounted Russian oil. The goal is to create leverage to bring Russia to the negotiating table for a lasting peace in Ukraine. This development comes amid escalating tensions as the U.S. has just seized 2 Russian Shadow Fleet vessels linked to Venezuela.
This newly released footage shows the moment the U.S. military boarded the alleged Shadow Fleet vessel linked to Venezuela. The U.S. seized 2 such ships, one of them under a Russian flag. The U.S. says the registration was faulty and therefore the vessel was stateless. Russia says the seizure of the oil tanker is illegal and demands the safe release of the crew.
The present situation will create more tensions between Russia and the United States.
American Senator Lindsey Graham says the U.S. Congress will soon vote on a new bipartisan bill allowing the president to impose new sanctions against Russia.
If implemented, these sanctions are an incredible weapon. It's like they meant to be to the tune of 500%. For the countries which are trading with Russia, buying specifically Russian energy, meaning oil, gas, and also uranium. And the bill mentions 3 countries specifically: India, China, and Brazil.
The proposed sanctions can be triggered if Russia shows no goodwill in negotiations or if it escalates the invasion of Ukraine.
So it's all really about the giving President Trump instruments in his approaches towards Russia in order to force Russia to come to the negotiating table.
Donald Trump, in a recent interview for the BBC, said he was disappointed with Vladimir Putin, but will continue working with him to achieve peace in Ukraine.
It is no longer a safe assumption that Trump will side with Putin. And I think the Russians might be becoming nervous about this. I'm not confident that the U.S. will end up backing Ukrainian security, but this is certainly a growing possibility, and I welcome it.
Ukraine has long said Washington has the tools needed to pressure Russia, calling on the U.S. administration to use them to help bring peace to the war-torn nation.
During the opening ceremony in Nicosia for the launch of Cyprus's presidency of the EU Council, President Nikos Christodoulides expressed his support for Ukraine. European Council President António Costa underlined the timing of Cyprus's presidency, that it comes at a challenging moment, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy also delivered a speech.
We offer unwavering political, economic and humanitarian support to Ukraine. We support its sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity. It's a policy which I have repeatedly stressed that will continue to be strengthened during our presidency. Because quite simply, Cyprus, all of us here, know firsthand what invasion and occupation means, what refugees, missing persons and the trampling of basic human rights means. This is the goal for our presidency, a European Union that combines its strategic autonomy with its international extroversion.
Cyprus takes the helm of the Council at a very challenging moment, when the international rules-based order is under attack, undermining multilateralism, fair trade, and the fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter. Cyprus' own history of occupation and division has given it a very concrete understanding of the crucial value of international law for peace and stability among nations.
I'm glad to be here as Cyprus begins its presidency of the Council of the European Union, and this is a presidency we all expect a lot from. For Ukraine, this moment is really very meaningful, just as it is for Cyprus, a member state that unfortunately remains divided but committed to lasting peace and is fully equal in Europe. And we sincerely hope that this war could end during your presidency.
800,000 residents in the city of Dnipro in Ukraine and several other areas in the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions have been left without power, heating and oftentimes running water after Russian strikes have damaged critical infrastructure.
As temperatures continue to drop, nearly 800,000 people in the Dnipropetrovsk region alone have no access to electricity.
At night, the Russians once again struck the Ukrainian energy sector. As a result of the attack, the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions were left almost completely without power.
The Russian strike damaged critical infrastructure, forcing hospitals and other critical sites to operate on reserve power. Local residents are left without electricity, heat, and often running water.
The power went out at night, so we only felt the inconvenience of the outage in the morning. The bad thing is there is no heating, as temperatures below zero are expected, and it's unclear how we will get through that.
Officials report that repairs are being carried out in an intensified manner in Dnipropetrovsk, while in Zaporizhzhia power has already been restored.
Repair work continues in the region to restore power and heat to consumers. Power has been partially brought back up for social and critical infrastructure facilities. Electricity supply has been restored in Zaporizhzhia. However, in order to avoid repeated mass power outages, we ask consumers to limit the use of hydroelectric devices.
Cold weather with temperatures dropping below minus 20 degrees Celsius is likely to slow down repair work.
Danish troops are on standby in Greenland to guard against a potential U.S. incursion. Despite the White House framing the island as a security priority, the threat of force has backfired domestically, sparking dissent among a rising number of Republican senators.
Danish troops rehearsed defending Greenland. On Wednesday, Copenhagen confirmed its soldiers are ready to counterattack invading forces without awaiting orders. They would shoot first and ask questions later if the US invaded the self-governing territory. This comes after President Donald Trump earlier this week repeated his desire to take control of the Arctic island.
We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic.
But the Trump team's threats of possibly using force have fueled a backlash on Capitol Hill. 8 Republican senators have now publicly come out against the White House's recent hostile statements directed at Denmark, as well as any kind of military action against Greenland.
Even a modestly intelligent 9th grader knows that to invade Greenland would be weapons-grade stupid.
So all this stuff about military action and all that, I don't think it's I don't even think that's a possibility. I don't think anybody's seriously considering that. And in the Congress, we're certainly not.
Totally dissatisfied about their answers of going into other countries. Totally dissatisfied of what they might be doing in Greenland.
Greenland wants to work with us, so does Denmark. There's no reason for these threats and insinuations that everything's on the table to the military. It's just wrong. I feel like it's very I use this word right now, maybe too much, but very amateurish. I feel like we've got high school kids playing Risk.
Talking to Adam Yasser of TVP World, Robin Niblett, Distinguished Fellow at the Chatham House think tank, said,
So there is one way of going about it, which is to say Greenland is essential to America's future security in a world where it may be competing with both Russia and China simultaneously, and that Greenland is a critical part of that infrastructure, as it was in the last Cold War against the Soviet Union. The question then becomes, do you need to own it? Do you have to own it to be safe?
One former US ambassador to Poland told TVP World it is disgraceful of the US to consider using military action against an ally.
It would be a body blow to transatlantic solidarity. It would mean that the United States was behaving as one of the aggressor nations that we used to oppose. Our old enemies from the 20th century behaved in an aggressive fashion. It is disgraceful to see the United States considering doing the same. So I don't like that at all. And I think that Europe is well advised to keep sending the signals to Trump that we cannot get away with anything like this cost-free.
And on Wednesday night, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer did just that during a call with Donald Trump. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio plans to meet Danish leaders next week. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reports Trump officials are rushing to assemble business deals that would make cooperation with America more attractive.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed a memorandum on Wednesday to withdraw the U.S. from 66 international organizations, agencies and commissions, and yet another step to limit the country's involvement in international initiatives. The list of organizations includes bodies belonging to the United Nations system, as well as some dealing with combating hybrid threats and the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. The memorandum is reportedly the result of a review ordered by Trump last year to determine whether U.S. membership in international organizations is in the country's interest. According to a statement by the State Department, the institutions were deemed redundant by the Trump administration. European farmers remain angry and unappeased despite the European Commission's attempt to quell their anger with early access to 45 billion euros worth of funding under the next Common Agricultural Policy budget, which might come into effect as soon as 2028. Italy, a skeptic of the Mercosur deal before Christmas, may have been swayed since New Year's. The next critical vote is just around the corner, which means that the biggest free trade deal in EU history might finally be approved soon.
As the European Parliament nears a critical vote on what could become the biggest free trade deal in the bloc's history, farmers are taking to the streets in protest.
Of course, we must say no to Mercosur. Mercosur must not be signed. Of course, Mercosur will open the doors to foreign goods that will come and compete in completely unfair ways with our own products. And that's exactly what we're contesting today.
If approved, the EU-Mercosur agreement would create the world's biggest free trade zone, affecting over 750 million people and 25% of the global economy. It would eliminate more than 90% of bilateral tariffs on everything from food products to machinery. In a new era of rising trade barriers and protectionism, it signals an attempt to safeguard the free trade-based global order established after World War II.
A European strategy is to have free trade. The American approach is to have increased tariffs. So that's a completely opposite strategy and sending a very strong message to the world. What is the European way of in this new world order?
Discussions for a free trade deal with India, on course to become the world's third biggest economy by the end of the decade, are also underway.
We know that this is the most populous nation out there in the world, is a waking up giant. So to have a free trade with India for the European Union would be a major breakthrough.
For the Mercosur deal to pass, at least 15 EU member states, representing 65% of the bloc's population, must vote in favor. Until now, the opposition of populous member states like France, Italy, and Poland has caused support to fall short of that threshold. In a last-ditch effort to sway reluctant capitals, the EU on Wednesday offered farmers an additional 45 billion euros in a new budget package set to take effect in 2028. That concession may have paid off, likely securing the vote of Italy's Giorgia Meloni. Despite amendments to the deal, Poland remains skeptical.
We are still skeptical with respect to this agreement.
Polish farmers have been especially vocal against the deal, with another protest scheduled for tomorrow in Warsaw. With a critical vote expected tomorrow, the future of EU trade and foreign policy hangs in the balance. Maciej Wilowski for TVP World.
A U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent has killed a woman in Minneapolis, Minnesota, sparking widespread outrage. The man shot the victim 3 times in the head after she refused to leave her vehicle. U.S. Homeland Security said the agent acted in self-defense, a claim rejected by witnesses and local authorities.
I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the f*** out of Minneapolis.
This pointed statement came in response to the following incident captured on footage. A U.S. immigration agent shot the victim 3 times in the head.
ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism.
The claims were echoed by U.S. President.
The woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer.
But local authorities dispute the claims.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. Obviously, and I have to always lead with this caveat because it is true, an investigation still does need to be conducted. I had my perception of what took place based on the vehicle and the vehicle's positioning. It does not appear that the individual is trying to ram anybody.
Minnesota's state governor said the tragic incident was inevitable.
We've been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict.
The victim was identified as Renee Good, a 37-year-old woman, mother of a 6-year-old child. Local residents held a vigil to mourn the loss of Renee.
That's all for Midday Report. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you very soon. Goodbye.